Insurance fraud in the UK has hit epidemic levels. It's costing us around £2 billion every year. That's almost £6 million a day. Deliberate crashes, bogus personal injuries, even phantom pets. The fraudsters are risking more and more to make a quick killing. And every year it's adding over £50 to your insurance bill. But insurers are fighting back, exposing around 14 fake claims every hour. Armed with covert surveillance systems,
that's a subject out the vehicle,
sophisticated data analysis techniques, and a number of highly skilled police units. They're catching the criminals red-handed.
Just don't lie to us.
All those con men, scammers, and cheats on the fiddle are now caught in the act and claimed and shamed. Coming up, the full impact of a crash for cash plays out in front of passengers' eyes.
This was a fast road. It was just about to join the M40 motorway. The driver stood on his brakes to cause a crash.
Thames Valley Police target the UK's #1 insurance fraud. And a prisoner's attempt to stretch the truth results in a longer stretch inside.
He actually stated to his girlfriend that he was hoping to gain around £6,000 in compensation.
Crash for cash is the #1 insurance fraud in the UK. As its name suggests, criminals deliberately create crashes for huge insurance payouts targeting innocent drivers. It's often described as a victimless crime, and that the only people who pay are insurance companies. But not anymore.
Crash for cash, in its simplest form, is where you will have a driver of a car, and they are part of a criminal gang. They're determined to make a crash and for you to drive into the back of them because it's recognised generally through the insurance world that if you drive into the back of someone, it's your fault.
Scams like these are costing up to £400 million a year through fake claims. Inspector James Upton was the leading investigator of a horrific car crime, the first fake accident which had fatal consequences.
The worst is where innocent victims are targeted. That's only going to lead to one thing, that's someone being killed or very seriously injured.
In June 2011, 34-year-old Baljinder Kaur Gill was driving home along the motorway when she was involved in a crash for cash scam. The accident happened around 8:30 p.m. Two cars were working together, aiming to cause a crash. One car pulled in front of the other, hoping for a van behind to collide into one of their vehicles.
This was a fast road. It was just about to join the M40 motorway. It was a 3-lane stretch of road at 70 miles an hour. The driver stood on his brakes to cause a crash.
Baljinder was driving behind the targeted van.
Actually, the victim that they chose was Mr. Fallon in the green transit van, and was a sign-written transit van. It would have been clear to most people that it was a business-related van that probably had insurance. But Baljinder was immediately behind Mr. Fallon and was caught up in the plan.
She probably would have just thought everything's going to be fine. She was at the car, she was in a safe place. So when she leapt back in to grab a jacket because it was cold, that the second collision took place.
Baljinder had crashed into the back of the targeted green van. She managed to get out of her car, but it was so badly damaged from the first collision that she had to stay on the hard shoulder. Then events took a devastating turn.
Within a short period of time, another vehicle came along in the third lane, and unfortunately he was unable to stop in time and drove into Miss Gill and her car, and she died at the scene.
The devastating impact of the second collision can be seen in the reaction of passengers on a passing coach. This footage was so compelling, it was used in court.
My dad's come up to me and said, oh, the police were outside, coming up in the door to see what they want. come downstairs and I've opened the door and I've spoken to the two officers out there. And they've suggested that they come in and we all sit down and they can speak to us properly. I remember crying. It was just difficult.
We were just numbed. We have no idea what they said, what we hear. Up to about 6 or 7 in the morning, we were talking, crying, and just realised what they have said.
Luckily for me, the last thing I told my sister, I think it was the day before the accident, I spoke to her on the phone in the evening, probably about 7 o'clock. And I was just wishing her a happy birthday. And the last thing I said to her on the phone was, I love you.
Mr. Lee, who hit Baljinder and drove into the back of her car, was arrested at the scene. Mr. Lee was not a member of the gang, but was sentenced to a year in prison for causing Baljinder's death.
He was investigated, charged and found guilty of causing her death by careless driving at Reading Crown Court. But it should be recognised he was not part of that gang.
On the roadside, the members of the gang had been treated as innocent bystanders. It was only when the police started to investigate the accident further that they realised it was anything but an accident.
Bye.
At the scene, a passenger had given officers a false identity. It turned out the owners of 2 of the vehicles lived yards from each other and were in contact at the time of the crash.
We had seized their mobile phones at the point of arrest. Most of them denied any involvement in what had happened and certainly had said that they had no plan to create a crash or claim fraudulently for insurance purposes. What developed through the investigation into the mobile phone evidence was that they clearly were all in communication with each other before, during and after the collision.
By April 2014, the gang had been tried at Reading Crown Court. 4 members of the gang of 5 were sentenced for 9 years and above, and the 5th member was given 6.5 years.
It should really send a message out to anybody that's thinking about committing such frauds that it's taken very seriously and there's a high price to pay.
No sentence that any judge ever issued would ever be enough. It's never going to bring my sister back. There's no, in my opinion, there's no punishment that's suitable enough to give them after what they did.
Baljinder unnecessarily lost her life because of the unnecessary greed of this criminal gang. There's no place for this sort of driving on the UK's roads, and the police service will do everything that we can to stop it. And if it happens, investigate it. We want to make our roads safe, and we will do what we can and every investigative technique to identify these individuals and bring them to justice.
To think, instead of going out and getting a job and just working and doing what everybody else does, to commit crime and to get money that way, it's just horrible.
We're never going to get Baljinders back. They probably get their life back at one point, but we're not going to get our life back.
We got no life because we lost our 2 child. We have breathing and walking, but we got no life.
Crash for cash is becoming a major policing issue. Currently, UK police forces are investigating 110 of these scams across the country. Reports claim that 1 in 7 personal injury claims are linked to deliberate crashes. These collisions are designed to milk insurance companies of up to £30,000 per crash. It's big money, and it's a serious danger to the public. Britain's police forces are determined to put the brakes on this type of crime, and Thames Valley Police is no exception.
Police, open the door now, last chance!
Detective Inspector Louise Roddy from 4th CID has a team of 25 officers dealing with crimes from murder to blackmail and fraud.
We work closely with the Insurance Fraud Bureau and the Crown Prosecution Service to make sure that we've got a watertight case to present at court.
Thames Valley Police have witnessed the impact these crimes can have on the public, as they brought the criminal gang to justice who killed Baljinder Kaur Gill.
These accidents are taking place on busy roads, and the offenders can't possibly know what the end result of their crime will be. So it really isn't a victimless crime at all.
With Crash for Cash on the rise, 4th CID aim to track down these gangs.
I do think the action that we've taken also sends out a really clear message that Thames Valley Police aren't prepared to accept these types of offences in our area.
And the police will use everything in their power to bring these criminals to justice.
We will seek to disrupt any offenders, and we will target them if they continue to commit offences.
It's 7 a.m. Today, Thames Valley Police are getting ready to raid another suspected Crash for Cash ring.
So Operation is basically an operation that's focused on a series of frauds that have happened as a result of some induced or fake road traffic collisions. So the aim today is obviously to disrupt these offences, to stop them happening, to arrest the suspects and to prosecute them.
Police teams from CID, road policing and immigration have been working together, investigating a series of Crash for Cash crimes.
It's a police issue because of the scale of the offences. This is a series of crimes, and it does involve criminals that work together, and we believe that they're an organised group of criminals. So if we can have the sergeants back in the office over there, and we'll look to go out in the next 5 or 10 minutes. Thank you.
Sergeant Nigel Scarrett is preparing to head out with his team on today's raid at a company address, where it's believed that the suspected criminal gang planned the crashes from.
It's a first floor business premise. We're looking to arrest for suspicion of conspiracy to defraud and damage property and suspicion of dangerous driving. 3 subjects at the address, so we're not really sure numbers-wise how many's going to be there.
Nigel briefs the officers, directing them on how they will tackle the raid.
We'll try and park up short so you can go in first. Because of the time of day, we're not sure if anybody's going to be here or not. So likelihood is we're probably going to have to force it. So if you want to lead, follow Roger, all right, and then we'll come behind you in the van.
Ready, Todd?
Let's do it. Quebec Sierra 50, test call.
Raids have their risks. The officers have to be ready for any eventuality.
It's a big crime, really. You know, a lot of fraud, worth a lot of money. They're making a lot of money from it. Yeah, they get quite upset and want to fight you. So that's why we always go in quite strong, really. Quebec Sierra 50 at the address.
Speed is essential, as the police don't want to run the risk of any suspect destroying evidence.
Breach! Got a second person in here.
Another one. How many got? 2 in here? 1 in there? 1 in there. Is that it, yeah?
There's a few startled people on the premises.
We've got a warrant, okay, to search this address, which is what we're going to do, okay, so we're going to be here for quite a long time. Conspiracy of fraud is what we're looking at.
It's essential the officers contain the situation quickly.
That's how it is, you know, it needs to be quick. We didn't know what were behind the doors.
But with the size of the premises and the amount of possessions, the team could be here for days searching through the property's contents.
It's a massive place here. I think there's going to be loads we've got to go through, so if when any officers come free, if they could come and help, that'd be appreciated.
Still to come, the raid continues, making some surprising findings.
So far, we've seized computers, we've found some drugs on the premises, and also shotgun cartridges as well.
For most people, ending up on the wrong side of the law means spending time inside. Some inmates see it as a time for rehabilitation. But for the most cunning criminal, being locked up doesn't necessarily stop them from attempting to break the law. Personal injury prison payouts have become a new source of income for some inmates, as criminals see it as an easy way to cash in from their cells. Prisoner Noel Jennings was serving 12 months for burglary, but during his stretch, he didn't exactly stay on the straight and narrow.
Mr. Jennings had been play fighting with his cellmate. During that, he'd somehow sustained a slight cut to the side of his head.
When Jennings saw a puddle on the floor, he came up with a harebrained idea.
He claimed that there was a damp area outside the showers and that he'd slipped and fallen forward and caught the side of his head on the door frame, which had caused a slight injury.
Simon Cartwright is the governor of HMP Manchester and oversees 1,300 inmates at the high security prison. So-called accidents have become a regular source of income for some of the prisoners.
Claims submitted vary from issues of assault, issues around injury, issues around fighting, issues around broken equipment. If an event happens, and if I can describe an event being an accident or an injury, they are always routinely investigated anyway, and we carry out robust investigations into those incidents.
But unfortunately for Jennings, during a routine phone call home, he did literally put his foot in it.
We initially got informed by security that a phone call had taken place between Mr. Jennings and his girlfriend.
I need you to get hold of an injury claim solicitor for me.
During the phone call, he told his girlfriend that he had injured himself play fighting with his cellmate.
And I've gone out David's cell, and the doors are low, and I've jumped up to go pretend to butt him, and I've smacked my head clean off it and nearly knocked myself clean out.
Ah, that's what really happened then.
But he'd also noticed there was some wet floor outside the showers and that he was going to claim that he slipped on the floor and banged his head.
Tell him that there was no wet floor signs out on the landing or nothing.
Now, that's not what you said 2 minutes ago to your girlfriend.
And the doors are low, and I've jumped up to go pretend to butt him, and I've smacked my head clean off it.
With this so-called knock on the head, Jennings had high hopes of cashing in.
He actually stated to his girlfriend that he was hoping to gain around £6,000 in compensation.
Everyone's been saying to me to get about £6,000 because it's a big scar on my face.
But the prison's litigation team were one step ahead.
When we heard from security that this phone call had taken place, obviously we gathered all the other relevant paperwork that was needed, and then we just sat and waited for this claim to come into the office.
It turned out that Jennings' bright idea hadn't really been given that much thought. Perhaps that bang to the head had stopped him thinking straight.
The attempt of fraud was not well thought out at all. It was completely amateur. He knew that phone calls would be routinely subject to monitoring, so there was every chance that the phone call could have been picked up by security, which fortunately it was in this case.
When Jennings knew the prison was onto him, he held his hands up.
Once he was interviewed by the police, he admitted that he was actually injured during the play fight and that it was an attempt to put a fraudulent claim in.
Jennings was charged with fraud and taken to the Crown Court. He was found guilty of perverting the course of justice and given an additional 15 months to be added onto the end of his current sentence.
It always feels good when you can disprove a litigation claim when it comes in. So it was a really good feeling around the office that we could actually do something and get this guy prosecuted.
Jennings, by chancing his arm for the sake of £6,000, got another year inside. It just goes to show crime doesn't pay.
The message that we can give to the public and to offenders is that if you pursue false claims against the prison service, you will be brought to justice.
Royal Mail delivers thousands of letters and parcels every day, from birthday cards to gifts. But sometimes that long-awaited package just doesn't arrive. Thankfully, Royal Mail offers insurance for such events. But, yep, you've guessed it, where there's insurance, there's fraud. In June 2011, when one particular package was claimed to have gone astray, two bungling fraudsters gave a rather wet interpretation of this type of fraud.
We received a call from one of our post office counter staff who told us that she'd taken a package in, a special delivery package, insured for £2,500, but later on that day she'd realised that there was water coming out of the package.
It seemed that the customer was about to post a package that wasn't all that it was wrapped up to be.
I don't think the lady in the post office was at all suspicious of the individual who brought the items in. What she was suspicious of was the fact there was water draining down her counter half an hour later.
The fraudsters thought they came up with a brilliant scheme to make £1 or £2. They decided to post several iPads to the value of £2,500 via special delivery. But instead of iPads, they packed it with ice cubes. Hold on, ice packs, not iPads. But what they thought was a watertight plan disappeared before their very eyes. The counter assistant opened up the package and found inside a bag of melting ice cubes.
We assumed this was probably going to be a compensation scam, so we warned our colleagues in customer services to let us know as soon as they'd had a compensation claim with regard to that parcel.
Of course, it wasn't long before Royal Mail received a claim for £2,500 for iPads being lost in transit.
To the best of our knowledge, the iPads never existed. When we checked the packaging, we found there was nothing inside it but a bag of melting ice cubes.
It turned out the swindlers weren't as clever as they thought and had got in a muddle over how the postal service works.
No real understanding of how the postal service or our claim service works because we'd never dispose of a parcel. If a parcel is damaged in some way, we will always try to reconstitute it and we'll deliver it to the addressee.
The two fraudsters were Nathan Mensch and Nigel Bennett. Obviously a lover of packaging as he turned up to court with a bag on his head. In July 2013, at Shrewsbury Crown Court, they were found guilty of fraud and received a 12-month community order and had to undertake 150 hours of unpaid work.
From time to time, we do see fraudulent claims. The point is we do have an investigation team, so we will never leave these uninvestigated. We will always try to get to the bottom of it.
Was this a first-class fraud or just plain stupid?
Ice cubes themselves are unusual. I've heard of it happening in other areas. We've never seen it before. It certainly wouldn't work because the ice has got to go somewhere. So it was a fairly poorly thought out scam, really.
If at first you don't succeed, try and try again. For the craftiest of fraudsters, when a claim fails, they don't give it a second thought of trying it on with a different insurer.
We received a call from the policy holder who reported accidental damage to his bedroom carpet caused by spillage of hot hair removal wax.
For this particular claimer, chancing his arm got him in a sticky mess.
Part of a routine inquiry would be to make database checks, and we very quickly discovered that the policy holder had a very similar claim only 4 months prior with another insurer. On checking the previous claim in a little bit more detail, we'd identified that that claim hadn't actually been paid, but also was accidental damage to the bedroom carpet caused by hot hair removal wax.
He denied all knowledge of the previous claim.
The policyholder insisted that there'd been no previous damage to the carpet and he'd been in that property for some time.
What the claimer hadn't counted on was that the insurance companies talked to each other and Allianz could easily get its hands on the details of his previous claim.
The similarities were beyond coincidence. One of our very experienced investigators listening to both calls using voice analysis techniques, and he was able to determine that both calls were indeed made by the same individual.
Again, the trickster denied all knowledge.
We gave him an opportunity to provide a further explanation, and he still insisted at that point, even confronted with the evidence we obtained, that it was all a misunderstanding. We went back to him and gave him an opportunity to confess. He didn't. Still insisted that it was all a misunderstanding.
Even though it was a small claim, it was referred to IFED, the Insurance Fraud Enforcement Department. The specialised police unit takes a dim view on any form of fraud, and the claimant lost more than his claim.
The policyholder, we believe, was concerned about us referring to IFED because he was worried about his job. We found out he'd worked for another insurance company, and I think he was fearful of the consequences of that. It really wouldn't have gone down too well with them.
You're right. They didn't look too kindly on that, and he lost his job. And to top it all, he received a formal caution. But however small or large, no fraud will be tolerated.
The value of the claim submitted by the policyholder was only £245. But this really does go to show that insurance companies now take it seriously, have a zero tolerance towards fraud. This wasn't the most sophisticated attempt at fraud we've seen. He was easy to catch.
Quebec Sierra 50 at the address.
Thames Valley Police have been targeting crash for cash crime. Today, they're raiding an alleged gang's business premises.
Another one. We've got a warrant, okay, to search this address.
With the size of the premises, they've got their work cut out.
I think there's going to be loads we've got to go through. So if none of the officers come through, if they could come and help.
The officers need to be thorough in their search and can't leave any stone unturned.
We found it before we've been searching. There's one place that hasn't been searched, or one suitcase, or one briefcase, and you're just going to find that small bit of key evidence that could prove the case.
No matter how small the area. PC Roger Gilbert is a traffic investigator for Thames Valley Police. This is the culmination of months of hard work for Roger, who investigates traffic collisions, identifying possible links and patterns.
Every piece of paperwork here relates to different accidents at different times on different dates. There's probably a lot of unsuspecting members of the public out there who've been victims in these accidents who probably don't realise that they're induced collisions.
To build the strongest case possible, it's vital Roger gathers all the relevant paperwork to help bring the suspected offenders to justice.
We found various sets of car keys, another prepaid credit card. They basically go, we believe they go online and buy insurance, and they use the prepaid card, so they're harder to trace. But obviously, we found them in the drawers.
All potential evidence is bagged and tagged to help support the case.
So far, we've seized computers, paperwork, several mobile phones. We've found some drugs on the premise as well. And also, Clint's found some shotgun cartridges as well that we're not too sure if they're live or not. We're just keeping them safe. We're going to take them back to the police station and they'll be put into a safety cabinet, and the armed response vehicle, they'll just come to check that out. There's still a lot of stuff here. It's still possible we can find more paperwork, more mobile phones, maybe more firearms, you never know.
The drugs, cartridges and paperwork have been gathered as possible evidence and are being brought back to Thames Valley Police for further investigation. All in all, the officers think the raid has been successful.
I think without a doubt they've expected to get away with it. It sends a signal out to anybody else that's thinking about doing this sort of scam, committing these offences, that we will find them eventually.
On investigation, the police established that the men they found at the property were innocent and have nothing to do with the suspected criminal gang. But the items seized will now form a major part of the force's ongoing investigation.